Why does Obi-Wan Kenobi feel so cheap? I'm sure it's not just me that feels this way, and if I'm being honest, this issue is not limited to Obi-Wan. Other Star Wars projects as of late have just felt cheap, poorly directed, poorly executed, or just flat out poorly written. To make a video like this criticizing the show is not something I sincerely want to do, because naturally I want this show to exist and me not have any real problems worth talking about. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We're 4 episodes in as of this video being uploaded, and I gotta admit, this show just isn't doing it for me. Yes, there are things in here that I have enjoyed watching, but there are a lot more things that I don't find myself enjoying. A lot of things happen in this show that are just laughable. Sometimes it's the directing, sometimes it's the dialogue, sometimes it's the editing, and sometimes it's just the writing in general. Part of me wants to say this doesn't feel like a Disney production because Disney has so much money and talent at their disposal, but the irony is that at the same time, this totally feels like a Disney production. Let's start with the action. Whether it's shootouts with blasters or duels with lightsabers, nothing this show has offered in these departments has really done it for me. This show starts with Order 66 and got a content warning because America, and while I do like seeing Order 66, I'll admit that for whatever reason, the directing in this scene is lackluster. I think the female Jedi we follow has decent choreography, and I like the long take, but for whatever reason, it just feels cheap. I'm amazed that we're finally seeing live-action clones that aren't CGI, but at the same time, they still look cheap, and I don't understand why. I can't nitpick the shootouts in this series too much because Star Wars often has situations where main characters are trapped in narrow spaces or simply standing without cover, and the enemies just don't aim properly or don't even pull the trigger at all. The exact same thing happens in this series once the troopers get through the door and they just very lightly jog towards Obi-Wan without firing a single shot and then get swept up by the water. And it wouldn't be Star Wars without main characters running straight ahead with enemies around them armed with guns as our heroes shoot every single one of them while they can't even raise their guns to shoot back. There's one scene in this episode that made me laugh hysterically, and it's not for a good reason. Do not even get me started on the lightsaber duels in this show, because boy, has Disney still not learned how lightsabers work. I'm not even kidding, Obi-Wan literally whacks a stormtrooper with a lightsaber that can cut through anything and it bounces off of him. I alluded to it in my last video, but yeah, I felt that Vader and Obi-Wan's first fight was pretty underwhelming. I really think it took watching this sequence for me to start realizing that the issue really was that this just all felt cheap. I brushed off some of the stuff that looked goofy in the first 2 episodes, but I can't ignore it anymore. I swear, I don't know how or why they did it this way, but it just doesn't feel right.
You're wasting your time, you know that, right? You'll never find us all.
But back to what I was saying, their first fight feels cheap. How the f did the Scene 38 fan edit make Vader a more compelling duelist than an actual Lucasfilm production? Here, judge for yourself. Now, I think the Scene 38 fan edit is very in your face with the editing, but I think the dueling is far more intense and on par with the prequels. I don't know if the lightsabers are just heavier because of the electronics in them, but if that's the case, stop using them. Really, just don't use them. I know it's good for natural lighting reference, but they didn't use it in Rogue One, so Vader's fighting is way more fluid here, and the lighting still looks good even after it's added in post, so just do that. I know the Vader suit is heavy and it's certainly hard to move in it, but again, this is a Disney production. Vader should be an absolute beast. The restraints of the year being 1977 for Vader's first duel should not be applying here almost 50 years later. There's still one more fight in this show, and if it sucks and it's not the rematch of the century, then yeah, I'll be upset. Now let's move on to the directing and the editing. I'm sure you probably noticed it too, but the scene where the bad guys chase after Leia to kidnap her is bad. it's pretty bad. I'll say it again, I love Vivian Lyra Blair as a young Leia, but it's not her fault that she's like 9 years old and has the stride and speed of a 9-year-old. But why the f do none of these fools catch this child? At one point, one of them has a clear shot to catch up and grab her, but they just break off from chasing her directly from behind and try to go at a side angle. Oh, and don't forget this amazing maneuver by one of these galaxy brain geniuses, where they run directly into a tree branch and then act like it spawned out of nowhere and they're mad it's in their way. This show has several instances where either time, distance, or basic physics is completely thrown out the window to service the script. When Reva sees the shootout on the rooftops in episode 2, she doesn't appear to be that far away, but then she starts doing force parkour across the rooftops in a somewhat comedic sequence, and this too feels cheap. Not only does it take her much longer to get there than it would seem, but everything she does looks like it's been slowed down. For the most part, it looks like Moses Ingram did all her stunts, and I don't know why. She doesn't really seem like she's that fast, so get someone faster who looks more convincing on screen. Her parkour and front-facing backflip are not fluid at all, so it seems obvious she's on wires. Like I said, it feels cheap. In episode 3, the stormtroopers ask Obi-Wan and Leia about why they're out in the fields, and when they say it's a long story, they say,
"It's a long way."
This is us! Thanks, Breck!
Then, immediately after this, Obi-Wan tells Leia about her real father, her real mother, and how he became a Jedi, all in earshot distance of the driver who's an Imperial bootlicker. But this is not where the issues of this episode end, because it gets much worse when part of the story gets written into a corner, or should I say a narrow path. Tala Durith is going to get Leia and Obi-Wan off planet using a secret passage, and for all we can see it has one path. Forward, or backward if you turn around. Obi-Wan doesn't go with Tala and Leia because Vader has arrived, so he goes off to face him. Eventually, Leia tells Tala to go back for Obi-Wan, and that she'll go on her own. At the same time, Reva has discovered the secret passage, so logically Tala would cross paths with Reva on her way out, but she doesn't, and it gets worse. Leia reaches the end of the passage and finds herself face to face with Reva. Reva discovered the secret passage, which again we only assume has one path, and I guess this makes her know where the passage leads? This is never explained, but Reva just ends up on the opposite side of the passage where it ends to kill the pilot and kidnap Leia again. Thanks to a convenient script and easily forgiving plotting, Tala Durith never runs into Reva and manages to rescue Obi-Wan after he's severely burned. She shoots something, it explodes, and the burning fire gets bigger, and then Ned B just hauls off Obi-Wan's body while Vader just stands there, watching. It's too bad he's only like the most powerful man in the entire galaxy. I mean, there's no way in hell he'd be able to just pull or freeze the droid and Obi-Wan from across the fire. Come on now. This latest episode is a mixed bag of the issues I already talked about. Stormtroopers surround Obi-Wan in a narrow hallway and never take their shot when his back is turned to them. The Empire's torture devices seem to always be hesitant to turn on and start torturing the victim to give the hero enough time to come in and save the day. And again, nobody can seem to direct or edit Reva's scenes to make her look cool or do cool things. I mean, what the f*** is this?
Get in. Wait!
I got you, Sully, just go!
Wait, leave her!
But even in the midst of all this cheap and lazy crap, this show barges in with something cool they know you're gonna want to see.
You were born what the feet would bring.
The writing and dialogue in this show just sucks in general, but I don't even know if I care though, because Star Wars has never really been known for its amazing dialogue. But surely, Disney and Lucasfilm can afford to hire the most talented people in the industry who know how to write and direct characters. We have 2 episodes left, and we're still only getting hints about Reva's backstory and her motivations. Obi-Wan still sucks with the Force and a lightsaber, and I will finally admit it, but this show does not feel like it's about Obi-Wan. No, I don't think this show is a bait and switch with Reva and Obi-Wan, but I think this show is not a great example of a character piece, like we all kind of thought this show would be. This show hardly deviates from the Lone Wolf and Cub narrative that we see in The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch, and in other Star Wars media. I'm starting to wonder, can they tell a Star Wars story outside of this narrative framework? Andor and the Acolyte seem pretty interesting, but honestly, I won't be shocked if Andor rescues and saves a kid or there's a Sith child prophecy. I think the volume is really cool and a great example of innovation, but for some reason, it makes the scope of Obi-Wan feel much smaller. Andor has one trailer out right now, but that looks much larger in scope already, probably because it was mostly shot on location. The Batman used a similar volume, but it looked pretty cinematic. So I guess it just feels cramped and cheap because it's a TV series? All in all, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying some of the stuff this series has to offer, but as a whole, I also won't lie, it's not my absolute favorite thing right now. I know what you're gonna say, oh, you should temper your expectations, but I have been hoping for Clone Wars flashbacks, and we haven't been lucky with that yet. Hayden Christensen is not even in the suit for really any of Vader's scenes, so I figured he'd be in several flashbacks, but we have 2 episodes left, and all he's done is just sit in the back to tank with burns all over him. As somebody who loves Hayden as Anakin, this is disappointing. Now look, I'm fully prepared to eat my words here on this channel if the remaining 2 episodes somehow manage to knock my socks off, but I don't see that happening. I will be doing a full series review of this once the series concludes, but of course I'll have plenty of other videos up before that. A few days ago I hit 1,000 subscribers, and I can't thank you all enough for helping me reach this milestone. Seeing my channel grow every day brings me so much joy, and I always appreciate your feedback. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns about this series or Star Wars in general, tell me about it in the comments down below. If you want to stay notified, make sure you're subscribed and hit that bell icon. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down, and tell me why I'm wrong and I suck. I'm Remnacor, I will see you all in the next one.